Hello everyone and welcome back to the 5 Thoughts series on the Backmarkers F1 Show channel following the 70th Anniversary Grand Prix. It was a great way to commemorate 70 years of Formula One history with a great race in Silverstone. We got a lot to get into, so before we dive into our 5 Thoughts series, remember guys, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, give us a like and a subscribe, and also I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Alright, let's not waste any more time, let's get into my 5 thoughts following the 2020 70th Anniversary Grand Prix. Number 1. Thank God for Max Verstappen. Where would we be without this young fellow from Holland named Max Verstappen? With the way this season has started, it was quite clear that Verstappen and Red Bull would be the only legitimate challenge to the mighty Mercedes team. And we had to wait a few races until we actually saw Red Bull push Mercedes into an uncomfortable position. Before the 70th Anniversary Grand Prix, Mercedes had led every single lap except for one in Hungary, which was led by Max Verstappen. As the lights went out in Silverstone, Mercedes got through the first lap holding 1-2 as expected, but things started to look a little bit different when the laps progressed and they didn't pull away from the Red Bull of Verstappen like they did in previous races. With a genius strategy call on Saturday from Red Bull putting Verstappen on the harder tire, Max was hunting down Lewis Hamilton on the harder tire and making Mercedes' lives quite uncomfortable in the race. Then, during the first stint, Max's race engineer Giampiero Lambiase tried to tame the Dutch Lion by telling him to ease on the pace and watch the temperatures. But this is the part where we thank God for Max Verstappen. He refused to sit behind the Mercedes and drive like a grandma. I guess Dutch grandmas nowadays drive pretty quick. So instead of listening to his engineers, he pushed on and the strategy worked out brilliantly. The way he was able to manage the harder tires and stay out that much longer in comparison to Mercedes was key in Red Bull's victory. Even when Max came in for a short stint on the medium tires, his decisive overtake on Bottas on the outside of turn 7 was vintage Verstappen, and I'm sure it got the Dutch fans on their feet watching at home. It was a complete team victory from lights to flag that was well managed by both the driver and the strategist on the pit wall. It seems like I say this every week, but we really do need to see Max Verstappen in a more competitive car so we can have a chance to challenge for wins every single race weekend. Despite the rough start to the season, Verstappen is now second in the Drivers' Championship and might have actually forced Mercedes to start looking over their shoulders. Red Bull still have a lot of work to do in order to shorten the gap, but it's races like this that show us the true greatness of a driver like Max Verstappen. Number 2. Leclerc putting the Ferrari where it doesn't belong. Continuing the theme of talented drivers of present and future, a lot of credit and admiration has to go to Charles Leclerc in that SF1000. In a car that has looked at times to be the 6th best on the grid, Leclerc has put the Scuderia on his back and have put them in a position in which they really shouldn't be at this point. Through 6 races in 2020, Leclerc has 2 podiums and currently sits 4th in the Drivers' Championship. Not only that, he single-handedly placed Ferrari 3rd in the Constructors' table, which many did not expect at all. We still don't know what is truly going on with his teammate Sebastian Vettel. I think it's pretty clear that Vettel has not forgotten how to drive, but it's obvious that the relationship between team and driver is getting more and more toxic as the weekends go on. Even with all the Ferrari drama, Leclerc has been able to keep a calm head and bring home results for Ferrari this season. In a race that saw many teams opt for a 2-stop strategy, Leclerc gambled on a 1-stop and it worked out well in the end. It was really unexpected to see Ferrari of all teams go for a 1-stop and to actually make it work, but somehow they did. The performances of the young Monegasque have flown a little bit under the radar in the last couple weeks, but I think he deserves a lot of praise and credit for his result in what's a really difficult work environment. One can only imagine what an F1 season would look like with Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari drivers all in a close fight for the World Championship. Number 3. Softer tires the way of the future? Mercedes must be praying for a cold Sunday afternoon in Barcelona come next Sunday. It's pretty widely known that the only visible weakness that Mercedes has is in hotter conditions like we saw in Silverstone. The combination of higher track temperatures and softer tires really threw a wrench in the plans of another Mercedes 1-2 finish. So that begs the question now, are softer tires the way to go for the future? There's certainly a case to be made after the 70th Anniversary Grand Prix. Not only did it destabilize the front of the grid, it also mixed up the whole field with only one car holding its qualifying position, which was Lance Stroll in P6. It made a much more dynamic race as most drivers had to do a 2-stop strategy, with even some opting for 3 stops in the end, like Hulkenberg and Latifi. What this gave us was unpredictability and the chance for some real big surprises, and we definitely got that with Red Bull controlling the pace of the race and Mercedes struggling a lot with blisters. Next week in Spain, Pirelli have opted to switch back to the harder tires in the C1, C2, and C3 compounds. The Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya is another high-load circuit similar to Silverstone, so the choice does make sense in that regard. But, with the 2 races that we saw at Silverstone to examine, the softer tires gave us a much more exciting weekend altogether. Had we gotten a safety car or 2, I think it would have been even more thrilling in the end. The current forecast for Barcelona next week is a lot of sun and temperatures around 30 degrees Celsius. One can only assume that the track temps will be hovering north of 40 degrees, so that's going to be a little bit of a cause for concern for a team like Mercedes. I think many fans will agree that a one-stop, high-tire management race is not really what we want to see. Opting for softer compounds for future races could shake up the field and let the drivers do what they're meant to do, and that's push the car to its limits to maximize the results. Number 4. The Hulk deserves a seat in 2021. Nico, hold on a second, guys. I gotta check with Daniel Ricciardo to see how to pronounce his last name. Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate that. Even though Max Verstappen might have gotten driver of the day, Nico Hulkenberg deserves driver of the weekend. After being thrown into the fire last weekend, you could tell Hulkenberg was much more prepared for this weekend's race. He had good pace in practice, and then unleashed the true performance of the car in qualifying. In only his second qualifying session of 2020, Hulkenberg finished P3 and almost 4 tenths faster than his teammate Lance Stroll. Nico has always had his loyal fan base, but I think the support he received all weekend long was nothing short of amazing. Every F1 fan on social media was cheering for Hulkenberg all weekend long, and the positive support he received makes you realize just what we're missing from the German on the grid. A true professional with a great attitude and a ton of talent, Hulkenberg showed us in a short amount of time what he could do in a competitive car. It says a lot when you jump into the car last minute and outclass your teammate that has thousands of kilometers more experience in the current car. Hulkenberg not only satisfied Racing Point's need for points, but also used the opportunity as a showcase for other teams looking to change driver lineups for 2021. I think it's clear that Nico Hulkenberg deserves a spot on the F1 grid next season, and it's clear that his fellow drivers hold him in high regard. Now, where could he land in 2021, you ask? It's difficult to say at the moment as options are running a little bit short, but there could be some openings possibly at Alfa Romeo or Haas, and in maybe a dream scenario, maybe Red Bull would want to have 2 Dutch-speaking drivers for 2021 and beyond. Number 5. FIA to blame in Racing Point controversy? It seems like F1 is really getting into this protest business, aren't they? Well, in the case of Racing Point, the protests are actually related to the car and the action on the track and not off of it. Before Friday practice, a decision was reached in the case of Racing Point's brake ducts, and they were found to have breached the sporting regulations in relation to their rear brake ducts specifically. They were fined €400,000, which I'm sure to Lawrence Stroll is about change he has in his wallet, and they're also deducted 15 constructor points for this season. I won't go into the detail about the decision's findings, as I don't have a law degree, so I'll leave that to the people who are a bit smarter than I am. If you want a really good and simple explanation of the Racing Point controversy, check out the Race's video on YouTube in relation to this protest, and their video breaks this down in terms that you can easily understand. It's definitely worth watching. It was when I was watching this video that I started to think that maybe the blame doesn't lie on Racing Point or its rivals. The attitude of Racing Point this past weekend certainly wasn't one of a guilty party. Racing Point team principal Otmar Safnauer welcomed further investigation into the processes and even hinted at intention of appealing the decision to the International Court of Appeals. Then, on race day, we saw a rare prepared statement from team owner Lawrence Stroll in which he firmly stood his ground and called other teams' claims of Racing Point cheating, quote-unquote, appalling. We don't often hear from Lawrence Stroll, so the severity of this situation is quite evident in the fact that he is speaking publicly and going on the attack. In my opinion, it seems like Racing Point were not clearly given direction or explanations by the FIA in how to address their listed parts for 2020. After all, it was the FIA that changed the rules back in July of 2018 to make brake ducts a listed part for this season. As many have pointed out, Racing Point can't just unlearn what they already know in relation to the parts they got from Mercedes. The FIA decision to allow Racing Point to continue to race using an illegal part is maybe more lenient because they know they made mistakes as well. I do believe that Racing Point honestly went ahead with the design of their car, firmly believing that everything that they did was within FIA regulations. The entire situation is confusing to say the least, but the FIA needs to take a little bit more responsibility in this situation. Why even make changes to regulations when you cannot clearly address these issues that teams face when designing new cars for future seasons? Considering the FIA's history and their recent closed-door agreement in the Ferrari engine saga of 2019, I don't think that they are completely innocent in this controversy either. Well, there you have it. Those are my 5 thoughts from the 2020 70th Anniversary Grand Prix, and it's that time where you get in the comments down below and let me know what are your thoughts from the race this past weekend in Silverstone. Let me know in the comments below, and if you like what you hear and you like what you see, give this video a like and a subscribe. We appreciate all the support, and we'll see you next time.